Welcome to Speaking Prowess. Are you ready to supercharge your communication skills and achieve unstoppable success? You're in the right place. Join Sifu Rafael, the visionary founder and master instructor who transforms leaders into powerful communicators, blend communication mastery with cutting-edge leadership strategies. Prepare to unlock your full potential and make every conversation count. This is Speaking Prowess.
Brigitta, happy Friday. How are you today?
Happy Friday, Rafael. I am fantastic because I get to be here with you. How are you?
I'm exceptional, getting better every day. But I got to tell you something. That intro that we just saw, there's something missing. It's not right.
What could it be?
I know. Let us make a little bit of an announcement that you are going to be my official co-host. You and your team, you're going to bring other people on. So we have to adjust that intro.
We get to adjust it.
We get to adjust it. I am thrilled. And guess what? We have two exceptional guests today.
We do.
One who happens to be quite close to you.
Yeah.
I understand that this person is a superhuman being. And
I'm not so sure about that. Let's be careful with that.
But and then I have somebody that I've started to get to know, and she is truly, truly exceptional. And I just love having her on. And so why don't we go ahead and bring him on? So we have Raquel and we have your husband, Christian. How are you both?
Hello.
Good morning. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Yes. So the topic today is leveraging communication. Who wants to go? How do you leverage communication?
I think that people misunderstand the misnomers of communication. The point of it is to understand and to begin to understood. And so sometimes I've seen a lot of posts and they're like, I'm not responsible for how you understand what I'm saying. In which case then I say, maybe you should hush. Because if you don't want to be understood, then what's the point? So it does take a little bit of practice and really not that much additional education. Some people are just naturally really good at connection. They're naturally really good at reading body language. And so they're gifted that way. But the rest of us, there are many different ways for us to learn things very quickly so that we connect with people, because we want to do that. Everything we want is in the gift of someone else. And when we learn to leverage the communication, including even how we talk to ourselves, all those treasures get unlocked. But we end up missing out when we don't practice and really seek out how to be better communicators.
Powerful. I love the fact that you said we have to practice communication. Yet so many of us don't. Do you know how many communication experts I've met who don't practice? Brigitta's laughing because she has too.
Oh boy, could I tell you stories of people that put themselves on a pedestal and talk about communication, but do not put it in their own practice. They share best practices, but they don't implement them in their own language. Mm-hmm. That's ouch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It actually hurts. It hurts them in the long run. And the short run too. Christian, I'd love to get your take on what leveraging communication means to you, my friend.
Well, when I heard Raquel's answer, I was reminded of a quote that's attributed to George Bernard Shaw, the Irish author playwright, who apparently said during his lifetime that the problem with communication is the assumption that it happened. And I think that's exactly what Raquel was saying, that it is my responsibility to make sure that the message that I am sending lands with my audience. I am not in control over my audience. The only thing that I'm in control over is how I send the message. And if it doesn't land the way I want it to land, then apparently I did something wrong in sending the message. So it's easy to point the blame to the recipient of our communication, say, you didn't do it right, you don't understand me, you didn't listen right, you did whatever, right? It starts with me. I'm the sender. I'm the only, that's the only thing I'm in control of. So to answer your question, how do I leverage it, is to, yes, practice best communication strategies. Also check in with myself. Am I getting the results that I want? Do people that I engage with, do they frequently do what I want them to do? Do I get the results that I want? If not, then maybe I need to change things. Again, that's the only thing I'm in control of, is my own.
Yeah, beautifully said. Beautifully said. Brigitta, we leverage communication every time you and I talk.
For sure. For sure.
We're pretty clear as to when we talk and what we're looking for. We connected many years ago, and one time I recall you and I was in Costco and we had a conversation, and it was about something really incredible, and the way we were able to communicate with one another. We were clear, we were concise to what we wanted, what we were able to do, and so forth. Tell me, and it can become the same answer that we've heard already, but in your own words.
I want to summarize what both Raquel and Christian said. The quality of our communication is the quality of our results. So in order to leverage something, which means to use something at a maximum advantage, yes, I agree, we must practice, but before we can practice it, we actually need to learn it. And we learn language, we learn communication, we learn grammar in school, and it's an and a but sentence. We also get to pick up supportive and non-supportive communication patterns from our parents, from our teacher, from thought leaders, from religious leaders, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa. And we pick those up, especially in our early years, because, in our imprint phase between age 1 and age 7, or age 0 to age 7, we just take in information with no judgment. It just goes into our subconscious mind, and then it stays there unless we say, I'm aware of this language pattern and it no longer serves me. And I'll give a really good example, if I may, Rafael. I remember my father saying, and this is a German saying, I'm going to translate it into English. My father said that you can't find money on the street. Like, money doesn't just lay on the street. Okay, that's what my father used to say. So that was the mindset that I grew up with. My father was a missionary. He gave his last penny, he gave his last shirt, and clearly there was no money. Okay. So when I became aware of that, I was like, okay, so what am I going to do with this awareness now? And I shifted it, and we can shift our communication when we recognize it. If it's so subconscious, we don't recognize it, we can't shift it. Can't change something that you have no idea over. And when we moved to Atlanta, even before when we moved to Atlanta, we find money on the street. I find money on the street. Actually, our daughter called me this morning and said, I found $2 bills, two $1 bills in the parking lot. There is money on the street. So be mindful of what you're telling yourself. That's the communication.
I love finding money, by the way.
We're a great money magnet. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's what we say.
Yeah, and when you consider the words that we tell ourselves, sometimes those words are the same words that were told to us as kids. And you said
For sure.
we're those words that kind of form who we are, who we become. But do those words serve us today? Do they? And how clear is our own communication with ourselves? Sometimes we're in a fog. Sometimes we're telling ourselves something that's not 100% true. Therefore, we continue doing it, but we want different results. How do we leverage that? How do we help anyone even listening to us to understand that when we look at our lives, when we look at our business, when we look at our relationships, they have to evolve daily, not weekly. Because to have your finger on the pulse, you have to feel, you have to know. And if you're a basketball player, a professional basketball player, when was the last time you practiced?
I don't play basketball, so I wouldn't. I did not practice. I did go to the gym this morning though and practice lifting weights that were way too heavy for me, I thought. And then I continued lifting them, and apparently I am able to do it until the coach said, add another 10 pounds. And like,
ooh,
okay, yeah, let's practice some more.
I think just going back to what was already said is that I tell people words matter because they become matter. So words are taking form, and they first take form in thoughts. And so when we're having those awareness, that's your grace moment. That's the point where your subconscious is bringing it up because you are ready to deal with it. We're not always ready to deal with everything. But our non-conscious is like our non-conscious, our subconscious, and then like our conscious awareness. So the non-conscious is like putting things in order, depending on how you're ready to receive something. And then it pushes it up to the subconscious, and then you have awareness. So in that moment of awareness, we can be like, oh, catch the thought. Is this a story that we still want to live in? Because everything we live is a story. And we're like, no, I don't want to live that story. No, money can't be found in the street. So we start to tell ourselves a new story. Those words are becoming, they're materializing as something, as thoughts. It goes back into our brain and starts to create these new neural pathways. And then I was like, wait a minute, now I'm a money magnet to the point now even your children are receiving the benefit of this new mindset, of this new way of looking at the world, because we're always going to receive our perception. And that is incredible to know and to realize that it doesn't matter what has happened to you, your background, that you grew up poor. You don't have to stay that way. You can actually choose. Remember when we were kids, choose your own adventure. And then depending how you read it and the choices you made will depend how the story unfolds. It's still like that today. We get to choose our adventure by choosing the words we're going to say to ourselves, the perceptions we're going to say yes to, the recognition of, wait, it doesn't take that long to change things, to pivot. Right? It's just like, oh, there's your awareness. That's grace. It's not for you to be like, there's something wrong with me. Why am I always negative? And really to berate yourself. It's really like, oh, this is a moment where I can change my life just by thinking and perceiving differently. And it's really that simple.
I think you're making a great point here, Raquel, that our brain functions that way, that we receive information and retain information via stories. We don't memorize facts. We remember the facts within the storyline, right? And that's how we can remember the factoids, because there is a narrative around it. And in my line of work, it is so intriguing to see how we create different stories depending on where in the world we grew up and which culture that we were raised in. So this story that Brigitta shared about her father, that money doesn't lie in the streets, that is a story that originated in a certain time and at a certain place in history. And that's why the story is the way it is, or was for him. And maybe it has been passed on to others, or Brigitta chooses or chose to interrupt that narrative and create a better one for herself. But I think in order for our clients to leverage communication to answer the original question one more time in a different way, is to recognize that different people in different parts of the world tell each other different stories. And the way we live in these stories or distance ourselves from some of those is how we show up in the world, how we communicate with one another. And that's when ships pass each other in the night, when we don't understand how people from different cultural backgrounds shape their stories or pass them on to each other, right? And that is, I think, what the Shaw quote also expresses, is that we think we understand one another. Do we really, though, all the time? And how many times do we check in whether we are understood, or if we, as the recipient of communication, if we understand what the other person is really relaying to us? Do we filter it through our own perception, or can we take a objective, somewhat neutral position in receiving the information? And unless we practice it, unless we're conscious about it, I would venture a guess that we on autopilot don't do that. Our filters will default, right? And it's an active, continued practice. It needs our awareness. I need to be fully awake and present when I communicate, to check my own biases, to recognize my own perceptive filters, and scout for or be a detective and look for clues in the message that I'm receiving from somebody else. What is it that I'm missing? Is there something that they didn't say? Is there something that they're saying between the lines that may not be obvious to me? Was there a change in tonality? Was there some facial expression that was fleeting and I potentially missed it? What is it that I'm not hearing, seeing, feeling?
I love this conversation because reading between the lines, understanding body language, listening, all skills that we need to practice daily. And the only way to do that is to speak daily, to have a conversation with another human being who you're not talking at, but you're talking with. I see so many people talk to each other, yet only one person got the message. And it was the person speaking, not the person listening. It was like Charlie Brown's teacher talking to them. And all of a sudden, they come back and they didn't do what the other person wanted. And it's because the other person was not clear enough. And clarity, I think, is a big aspect. And you talked about that earlier, Christian, about how clear we need to be with our messages and who's getting the message. When we can understand us, because if I want someone to do what I need them to do, I need to be clear as to what it is I need them to do. If I'm vague, they're going to be vague, and they're not going to do exactly what's needed, even if they work for me, right? How many people have lost their jobs because they didn't understand what the boss needed them to do? And it's the communication. So when I said earlier, does a basketball player practice? And Christian, you said you went and practice with weights at the gym. Practice is daily. We live every day. We should practice living. We should practice every aspect of our lives. And listening is probably the biggest thing that we lack in practice. Because when someone speaks, we basically, for the majority, all we want to do is put our 2 cents in. Yet we didn't let them put theirs in. So communication for me also is the listening aspect. And I got to tell you, Brigitta, every time I love when you take the pen or you take your glasses and you're doing this. It's such a great message that the viewers need to see. And if you're listening to this because it's an audio podcast, she's holding up a pen. She's attentive to whomever is speaking. And that's a skill that we need to practice every single day. Listen to understand, I think, is the most important aspect of it. I will also hold a pen.
Listen to relate, not to respond. Absolutely. And man, there was so much goodness in what you guys just said. Listen, there was a poll, and some big organization did this poll, and for saving my life, I can't remember which one it was. How good of a listener are you? And people like giving themselves 10 out of 10. I'm a great listener. What they're really good at, the majority of folks, is at waiting until it's their turn to talk. And that's not listening. And people get that mixed up. I know, I just got really real, really quick. But that's how it is. And in order to listen, you got to know what you're listening for. That's why I even have the problem with active listening. Well, I can be super present like I am right now. I can even, put my finger over my mouth and remind myself just to be silent and just to be super present in the conversation. But if I'm not in tune with your body language, if I don't even have a baseline, if I don't even know what to listen for, body language, tonality, minimal cues, words, what do those words mean? From which learning aspect does this person come from? From which value system does this person come from? There are layers and sub-layers of listening. But if we don't know, we don't know, right? And I think that's the biggest crux in communicating, that we don't know what we don't know. So where do we even begin? This right here, that's why I love that we're co-hosting, Rafael. This is how you start to realize, become aware of, oh, I don't know how to actually listen or what to listen for.
If I may jump in on this, sorry, Raquel, I think I just jumped on you. I'm sorry, really, really quick. You guys talked about clarity, and I don't know what I don't know. I wholeheartedly agree. And what is clear communication to some of us is not necessarily clear to others. So this is something that in my line of work I harp on constantly, I remind our clients that this is something that they need to practice as well, is that our communication style that is based on maybe our corporate culture, based on our national culture, will not work the same way in a different context. And our clients are multinationals, or they're doing business across political, geographical, and cultural borders. So they want to continue their domestic success abroad, very often by thinking that what worked at home will work as a carbon copy abroad. And they quickly find out that it doesn't. And they fix this and fix that, and they twist and turn on the dials until they realize it's not the quote unquote so-called hard skills that they need to adjust. It's what often is perceived as, and I put this in air quotations, so-called soft skills, because my skin crawls when I say that term. Nothing about these skills is soft as in weak or nice to have, because without clear, efficient communication, none of your so-called hard skills will come to fruition. Your rubber will never meet the road completely, right? And that's why checking our assumptions of what good communication is will be bottom line relevant in a global context. So I'm done talking, Raquel. Sorry, I jumped.
No, you're fine. Yeah, so much goodness here. And what triggered a memory when you were speaking, Sifu, was when I was very young. I was in my 20s back then. And I had a boss who,
You mean
and
yesterday, like last week or so?
it's like 30 years ago. And
What?
I remember this trigger. We had a new director come in, and he used to be a cop. And the joke was, I think he thinks he still was a cop because he was like one of those dominant people. You can hear him coming, boom, 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 on his walking. But my supervisor was the opposite personality. He was very like salt of the earth, not slow, but slower. And what ended up happening was the director favored me over my supervisor because it's really about being curious. I didn't know about personality gift clusters or anything, but I wanted the team to look good. I wanted my boss to look good. So I started studying his boss and his behaviors and the way he walked and the way he presented himself and the way he spoke. And he spoke in like bullet points. So when I would speak to him, I would then mimic that and I would speak to him in bullet points. Now, my reports had to be, on it. So he always used me as an example. He's like, look at her reports. It's like no fluff. It's exactly what I need. And so he would always put me on a pedestal. And I would run interference between him, my boss, and him, and try to like be the language expert between them two because they didn't get along, and they didn't get along because my supervisor just wasn't catching on. Like the way he communicated was in details, right? He loved the details. He wanted to know the how and get into the weeds, but his boss was not that type, and he only wanted to get into the weeds when he decided to, and it wasn't all the time. So having those little cues of even if you don't, you're like, how am I going to learn all this stuff? How am I going to remember? Just being curious, like, okay, study them. And it's in any relationship, right? That's going to work in your career. It's going to work in your business. It's going to work with your kids. Like my kids, they talk about teenagers. I have a 21-year-old son and a 15-year-old son. They text me, they hang out with me, they come and find me. I'm their secret keeper. So this misnomer of like certain generations are not communicative to their parents isn't true. So you can use this. We have it, like you were talking about, the opportunity to practice. And how do you practice? Being curious, choosing really love. Like, how do I love on that person? Does that mean that I need to sidestep my communication a little bit so they can understand me, so that we can connect? Because that's what makes life really juicy, is the connections that we get, that we have the opportunities to make. So if we just go in it with love and with curiosity, so many things would just fall into place for us organically and be so much better.
Love that. I got to tell you, I love that image that you have behind you, Christian. It says, I choose culture. Here's the whole thing about your culture, Raquel's culture, my culture. We're not fully living it. You guys are German. Raquel is Puerto Rican. I'm Colombian. Our cultures were somewhat different in the way they communicated back in the day. So I love the fact that you have that there, because it is, we want our culture, but we choose better. We choose to enhance our culture, I think, in the way we're communicating. We don't want people seeing our culture based on what happened in the past. We want people to engage with our culture because of who we have become and how we want them to know us. So when I tell somebody I'm Colombian, first, they're a little surprised. Second, when I was a kid, they used to think drugs, right? So that was the first thing that used to come out of their mouth. Oh, you're a drug dealer or this. I'm like, no, I don't even do that stuff.
I would think coffee or arepas, no?
Coffee, drug, right? Cocaine, coffee, both of those substances, right? Both addictive, by the way.
As are arepas, I think.
Oh, man, you just made me hungry. Okay, so see? So here's a challenge that I'm going to give all of us, is that we one day get together and have some food and enjoy, right?
Yes, for sure.
Raquel, are you
sure.
going to
I have
bring the
to come to
mofongo? I
Atlanta.
can't wait.
I gotta come
Yes.
to Atlanta. We'll find a place, and
Oh
Raquel will
yeah.
be there too. When we talk about culture, there's so many aspects that we don't know about culture and the way they communicate. And I think one of the best things is when we enter someone else's culture is to be at first inquisitive and find out what's right or wrong so we don't offend. Because a lot of times, even in the Spanish culture, I went to my friend's house and they were Dominican and they were having delicacy. And when they said what they were having, I was grossed out and I didn't want to have it because in my language, it was something gross. In their language, it was something special. Yet we both spoke Spanish. So it was about me finding out, okay, I got grossed out. I didn't tell him I got grossed out. I said, tell me, what is that exactly? So for me, it was finding clarity before I offended them. I was a kid. I didn't even know any better. But even as a kid, I knew I didn't want to offend them because they were inviting me into their home. I had to be about 9 years old, and I had the common sense not to offend them. So we need to consider that our kids nowadays are not necessarily getting the lessons that we received as children. Brigitta, you told me about, I remember our conversation when I first met you, when you were on the countryside and you were having these thoughts and ideas and conversations, even with yourself, where I don't think our kids are having that. And I think we need to start to give our kids variety besides getting on a tablet, on a smartphone.
I think that's where travel comes in, right? And I can now go, into a rabbit hole of why we need to send our kids abroad and let them, figure life out as they travel, no matter where they go. And we just literally, Christian and I had this conversation with our youngest daughter, where she's like, I really don't, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And I'm like, honey, you and us. I mean, no one knows really. And don't ever grow up. It's a trap. But go travel. Go find yourself by being exposed to all different cultures, to all different foods, to all different people. You will come back a changed person in a really, really good way. And I think there's that, what all of you said, I want to put under the umbrella, be flexible. When you cross cultures, be flexible. When you meet someone new, be flexible. When you are going into a situation that you're like, okay, I've been here before and I did it like this back then and didn't give me the result that I wanted, be flexible. You're not a tree. But what I do want to say with that is you're rooted in your own values. You're rooted in your own being, but yet you can be flexible. Think of a bamboo. A bamboo shoots really, really quick up into it. Well, first of all, it takes forever until it actually sprouts, but then it shoots really quick and it's very flexible. In Asia, they use bamboo to build high rises where they use rebar here in the States. But bamboo's always, no matter how flexible it may be in the wind or in the storm, it is always rooted in its roots. So we are rooted in our value, in our core values, and yet we can be flexible. And now I'm stating the law of requisite variety, the person with the most flexibility controls the system. I add on to that, the person with the most quality questions controls the conversation. And when you're so inquisitive, that doesn't mean when you control a conversation that you're constantly talking. That's not what I'm saying. You're constantly listening. You're asking really good one-liner questions, and then you zip, and then you take notes. Most of the time, I have something to write on and write with wherever I go, because I want to take notes.
Hello. We're all ready. You talked about bamboo. I had bamboo growing in one of my houses, and it's funny because as soon as I was moving in, my next door neighbor, who I had never met, they came say hello, and the second thing they said is, "When are you getting rid of your bamboo?" I didn't even move in yet. And I said, "What do you mean?" They go, "On the side of the house, there's bamboo everywhere." And I went and looked, and it was growing on my side of the yard and on their side of the yard. And it was because the previous owner that I bought from decided to grow one. And they grow like crazy. But I love the fact that you talked about the flexibility of bamboo, yet they're strong in their standing. And that's how we have to be as human beings. Be strong in your beliefs, but yet be flexible to allow others to share. Because your beliefs change, just like the leaves on the tree. They're not permanent. Certain beliefs may be there forever. If you believe in God, like I know I do, then that's a standard. It's a given, right? What's one thing that you have changed since you understood the principle of your communication style?
For me, it was to wait. Because it was like to wait because I don't have the whole story yet, so not to make judgments on something. It's so quick for us to have a perception and an opinion, but an opinion is not fact. So I need to wait and especially if something triggers me and upsets me, because when that happens, you go into chemical chaos, and now you can't see everything. You literally blind yourself. And so even when I want to purchase things that are super excited, it happens the same way, both sides. And so I've learned that I have to settle my emotions first, especially with something serious, because I don't want to damage the relationship. And it's better for me to pause. And if they're in their state and they really want an answer, then my answer has to be no, because I need to have my time to just settle my emotions down, so that way the next thing out of my mouth will be something that is true, even if it's a tough truth in love. So I have really had to learn how to, because I'm a kumbaya person. It's like in my heart, I'm like a hippie. Why don't we all just get along? Let's just come over here and get nurtured. We're good. And because of that, some people might have seen that as a weakness. And so because they have a different personality type, they want their answer, they want it now, or they want me to make a decision now, or they're trying to force me to do things their way. And it's really like getting, like what's being said, right? Having your roots down, understanding your values. Like, this is what I need to feel safe. And deciding this is my value, this is how what I need, and being okay with that, giving myself the space that I need. Some people need time to process. And I'm usually like a faster decision maker. So also learning that from other people, like giving myself the right to create the space that I need, the time that I need, so that when other people are in my space, they feel safe to be who they are. But I need to feel safe for myself, and I can control that. And if other people don't like it, then they will soon exit out of my life. And that's okay too. And being okay too, right? Because they're allowed to have their thoughts. They're allowed to have their belief systems and their values and the way they want to show up. I'm going to give them their allowance by first giving it to myself, so that I feel good in my skin and I'm holding down into my roots and my values. And then they can choose accordingly. And that's their choice to make. And also remembering not to take everything personal.
That's powerful right there. It's not about me anyway.
Which reminds me of a kind of famous little book by Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements. And that is one of the four agreements that Don Miguel postulates is that don't take anything personal. Whatever somebody says or does has nothing to do with you. It's got everything to do with them. What I changed, to answer your question, Rafael, I come from a family background that is not academic. It's I would say positively working class, not limited in resources, simply not highly educated family background. I'm the firstborn, and I embarked on a different educational path. And for me, my hang up, my old story was that I needed to prove something to the world by appearing smart and competent and having done my homework. So that was my mind frick, right? So I used to be very good at sending and posturing and making the world see how good I am at what I do. What I changed since is that I realized I'll never know everything. So what's the point? There's always going to be somebody smarter than me. So what is there left to learn? And I can only learn if I stay curious. And I've always been curious. I just had a bad way of showing it. So now I see Brigitta smiling and nodding her head. This is something that.
But also, she opened her eyes bigger, so
yeah.
It's every little cue there going.
All my family members will tell you that going into public with me is a challenging endeavor, because whenever my curiosity gets triggered, everybody else that's with me will lose at least an hour of their day, because I am very interested in people. And whenever I am curious, I let people know, I show them that I am curious in them. I'm interested in them. I'm not trying to be interesting. I'm interested in them. Because I want to learn from that person. I want to also figure out who am I dealing with. It's also a like intelligence gathering technique, if you will. But it's people's favorite topic. They like to talk about themselves. And what I changed for me is that I can talk less and listen more. And the more I listen, the more I learn. And if I find what I listen to is valuable to me, then I can engage. If not, then to use Raquel's terminology, I will exit that person's life.
Love it. I think that when we can all consider looking back on our lives, the actions or inactions that we have taken, it helps define, not to the world, but to us, who we are. And I love the fact that you said, Christian, about not being interesting, but interested. It reminds me of the commercial. I think it was Dos Equis with the most interesting man in the world, right? I think the most interesting man in the world is the one that's interested. The one who pays attention, the one that gives everyone their due time. And the reason I think that so many of us in the world don't see ourselves as worthy is because we're looking outward and we're not looking inward for the value that we can bring. Mm-hmm. Brigitta, what is your thought on the question I asked before?
I think when we, the question was what changed for me, and that's a loaded question. When we look at the value, when we look at within and we recognize what we value, then we don't have to make it about us. The ego doesn't have to come out. I can lean in and be fully present with the other and be fully interested. And what I learned, two things that I learned, because when Christian and I have been together for over 25 years. And when I met him, like today, his background is journalism. I mean, just by his profession, he's already curious and asks a ton of questions. And I wasn't like that. But I learned through our growing together and you know, I have a communications degree by just going to school, but I sucked at communications. Honestly, I sucked at it. And it was through that awareness that something's missing. I am missing like really big data points here. And they were so simple once I recognized them and I learned them and I continued to apply them and immerse myself in them. And it's the very basis is rapport. How do I build rapport with someone else? And I can only build rapport when I have that flexibility. I can only build rapport when I lean in and listen, when I know what to listen for, when I can have a very clear purpose for the conversation, and also recognize what's the other person's purpose for that conversation, but not be attached to it. But it's always about, and this is, I think, the biggest thing that I learned, it's about making it about the other. And I want to tell a quick story. And it's not my story, it's my daughter's story. And Christian, our oldest is 22. She's an actress, and she was in Canada for almost 3 months and was shooting a movie. And every morning she would get picked up by her driver at like 5:30. And because we've modeled over the years that, you know, you start out your day with going to the gym, because she wouldn't have time to go to the gym in the evening because she would just be so tired. She goes in the morning. So the gym in the area that she lived in, they had like little cabins. The actors had like little cabins. Opens at 8, but she has a key pass to go in, and she went in early in the morning. Well, the maintenance manager, caught her one day and said, didn't introduce himself, just went right at her and said, "We open at 8," with an attitude to her. And she's telling me this, and as she's telling me that, I'm like, how, you know, here's what I would have done. But here's what she told me what she did. She reached out her hand. She says, "Hi, my name is Amelie. What's your name?" And it was interested in him and recognized that he only did his job. And then she listened to him, and then she said, "Hey, I have to be at work." She didn't even tell him what she's doing. If she would have just said straight out, "Hey, I'm an actress. I have to be on set at 6 o'clock. I'm getting picked up at 5:30. I think that whole conversation would have ended. But that it wasn't about her. It was about her being interested in the other. And I think that is the biggest piece in communication, that we model it. I think Raquel said it earlier. We model it for others. Mm-hmm. And we don't model it by teaching it. We model it by using it. Because it's exactly the same thing that I would have done. And I was so proud of her.
Yeah, that was incredible. I love what Anilda said, that cancel the negotiation energy. Yeah, absolutely. Let's give you all a chance to give yourselves a 30-second commercial as to why someone should reach out to you. I'm going to let Christian go first, and I'm going to put your information going across the screen. I think you have a gift. What do you guys come bearing? Gifts? What's going on here, Christian?
We're just it's the giving season, no?
I love it. I love it. Go for it, my friend.
Go for the link. All I want from you is your email, and you'll get an ebook in return. 12 tips, a dozen tips on effective communication across cultures. Why would you want to engage with us? Is because you're doing business with people who are not like you, and this could be even within your own country or within your own language world. Rafael said it earlier. Colombian and Dominican Spanish apparently have some nuanced differences, and Puerto Ricanos probably talk a little different than Colombians as well, right? Same is true in the English language world. Could be true within India, within China. It doesn't matter. You find different cultural backgrounds, and when people want to be successful across these cultural borders, they need to take culture into effect. They need to choose culture, but they also want to choose it with a guide that helps them see what is hidden behind the facade of culture, and that's what we do.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you. Raquel, I'm going to let you go next. And then I have Brigitta, even though she's my co-host, she's come bearing gifts as well. So, Raquel.
Well, my name is Raquel, and I'm your GPS for success. I'm a Christ-centered mindset coach. And so I have high achievers find me when they want to really leave self-sabotage behind and get out of the prison of anxiety so that they can be and stay in their zone of genius, because that's where all the juicy stuff happens. So I was thinking about this, like, what can I give you? One of my things that people love, because I'm also a task animal, is a package called Task Animal. And it has an ebook, and it has videos, and it has a workbook. And so it really helps you to understand how you're wired to succeed, and then leverage how you're wired to succeed to actually create the time. That way you're moving in ease and flow and not feeling like I have to get to everything. Or maybe you're feeling like you're too slow on things. Actually, some people are created to go slower. It's your superpower. And so it's really around helping you to leverage how you're wired to open up the time so you can do more of what you love. So I'll send Sifu the code for that. So that way you can have the whole package for free on me.
Wow, that's incredible. Incredible. Before I bring Brigitta on, I wanna say, Christian, you, my friend, stepped in last minute. We had someone else who had something, an emergency with their family, and they had to step out. And Brigitta said, "I got the perfect person," and she was right. Brigitta, thank you so much for bringing your incredible husband and sharing him with us. Thank you. So, Brigitta, you also have an incredible gift for all of us. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I mean, when we talk about listening, when we talk about leveraging communication, let me give you a checklist that you can start practicing it and have something in front of you that you can focus on one or focus on two. Don't focus on the whole checklist. Focus on two of those elements, practice it, implement it, and then when it enters your subconscious mind and you're doing it subconsciously, that's a great signal when you can go on to the next one and implement that. I'm all about making this world a better place, and it starts with listening.
Yeah, beautiful. Love it. Love it. I do have a gift also, and it's not the gift of gab. By the way.
Yes, you do, though.
I do like to talk, but it's not because I want to hear my voice, because maybe my words are projecting outward from above, and I feel like every morning I wake up and I ask God. First, I got to thank Him for all the gifts He's given me, but then I ask Him to be able to share my gifts with my brothers and sisters. If you believe in God, we're all brothers and sisters, right? So my gift is I'm going to put my email there. And when you reach out to me, I will do an evaluation of whatever it is that you're looking for, if it's business or anything personal. And that's what I do. I do that for a lot of people, and no obligation, right? If you consider the time that we have every day, when you share your time with someone else, that's the biggest gift you can give. And you all shared your gifts with us today. I'm super, super blessed that you are all here with us today. Thank you. And with that, we're going to say, see you next time in 2 weeks. We have another incredible show coming up. Thank you again for being here with us. You guys don't go away, but everybody else, do me a favor. Have an exceptional rest of your day. Take care.
This is Speaking Prowess,